Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Babylon Balkan Show.
Hello, hello, hello. Zdravo, merhaba. Welcome to another episode of Babylon Balkan Show.
Just need to add zdravite, bună ziua, yasu, peshendete. I think we covered all the languages in the Balkans right now.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Who is our guest today, Onat?
Yes, today we have İlkan Dalkuç. He's from İzmir, Turkey, from my hometown. He is really knowledgeable guy on political sciences and specifically in Turkey. And he worked for various organizations. He also created many organizations about political science. And he is currently managing and also creating content in a Dactylo 1984 a website and also a platform and YouTube, Spotify about the politics. He's also contributing in the international media about the politics. So yeah, he's our guest today.
And because you mentioned the politics, that's why we have him here today. And by the way, he's our first Turkish guest here. And he will be talking, as you mentioned, the politics in Turkey. In this sense, we're going to have the one main topic, and it's the upcoming elections in Turkey, meaning that this episode is relevant. After you see this episode, the election will happen, and because of this episode, hopefully, you as our audience will understand better how important those elections are, not only for the Turkey itself, but also for the countries around it. And as Onat is showing right now, he hopes for the change, since in the last almost 20 years, there hasn't been a much change in political discourse there. Let's hope it will happen. And our guest today will explain it in more detail and also talk about the history behind it before, how the Republic evolved, and how is the current state, and hopefully what can we expect after those elections. So, without further ado, let's start the episode.
Yeah, let's go. It will be a very rich episode. Enjoy.
Indeed.
Before that, don't forget about subscribing, liking the video. Also check the links below on the video about Buy Me a Coffee, Patreon links to support us. Thank you in advance.
And like, share, subscribe, all of those stuff. You see, we forget this every time, but it means a lot to us because we're focused on the content, but also we need you to support us in order to continue having this wonderful content of ours that we cherish the most. So let's finally start this one.
Yes, let's go.
And here we back again.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Babylon Balkan Show with another episode.
Here now we have our guest, İlkan. Welcome, İlkan. Good to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Hello.
Usually when we start, our audience mostly knows the drill. Onat can also lead this way. We start our show and our episode with a few questions that are not really connected with the thing that we're talking about today, just to soften up the situation and just to have like a smooth ride. So Onat, if you may.
Okay. My question for this part is, what is the top 3 things on your bucket list and why?
Top 2 things on my bucket list. Maybe I guess I can reference our Turkish current political scene with my bucket list because I need a place to stay. I
Okay.
want to buy a house. I mean, my bucket list number one is that. But
Okay.
it is impossible in Turkey now with current prices
Yeah.
Yeah.
and high rising inflation. I mean, I couldn't do it. Maybe a nice dream, maybe a more of an interesting thing. I can say that maybe I want to write a book. I want to write a book in my bucket list. I want to
That's a
write a
good
book,
one.
not a purely academic one. Maybe some sort of an. I hate them, but I want to write a cheesy self improvement book. I guess. uh,
Ah,
I want
okay.
to write something like between philosophy and self improvement. Some that sort of a cheesy thing. I want to write it. Third one is maybe I just want to lose weight. I can say
Okay.
that. Maybe.
Oh,
That's
oh,
practical one, and yeah, quite
that's
easy.
also on my list for last couple of years.
For some people, it's easier to buy a house than lose weight. So it depends on the person. Yeah,
Maybe.
a cool bucket list. We didn't have
I
anyone
mean,
by
you can
now.
solve the, but
What,
also you
Gökhan?
can also solve the house back and gain the waist again.
True, true. Yeah, your second one, writing the book, we didn't have by now, but from our guests, it's a really interesting one.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have also from my side one question that I usually ask our guests. When you were little, what did you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be some sort of a scientist, maybe engineer and scientist, thing like that. I was more of an I like them, mathematics and
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing, but I became more of a social scientist guy. So
Okay.
I changed in that road. I was maybe unsuccessful about it. It were scientists and engineer and this kind of stuff. Maybe I wanna learn. I wanna not learn, but explore about mainly maybe rockets and this kind of stuff.
Oh,
But
I like this one. I had like similar one. Yeah, I still have it.
yeah.
So, are you happy right now with your change in this social field?
Yeah. I mean, I had started my university education in mechanical engineering, so
Mm-hmm.
I had my start at that branch maybe. But I purposely left academic interest in that science and engineering stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I changed my university. I became an I study economics after that.
Mm-hmm.
So gradually turning my back to science and engineering. It was purposely made a choice.
Yep.
Sorry, when I was studying mechanical engineering, we had some internships when in big factories. That they were producing ovens and fridges, that sort of stuff. Very big factory, and at that factory, I was in research and development part of the factory, and
Mm-hmm.
when I was working there, I actually think that I'm working here, just 3 or 5 people more in the whole world working like this kind of stuff. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be that kind of an irrelevant person
Uh-huh.
in the world. So I want to be I want to have some relevance to somebody, I guess, as you are
Uh-huh.
talking about. I want to.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I need that relevance.
You certainly have this relevance since we found you for this big elephant in the room, and because of your current passion in social sciences regarding right now the upcoming thing in Turkey, the big thing, as I said, elephant in the room,
Mhm.
the elections, and that's why you're here, and you have some relevance, and you can tell us about the upcoming big thing in Turkey. Before we
Mhm.
actually go deep dive into this topic, if I may ask, actually, if I may congratulate to both of you for 100 years of Turkish Republic, the Republic of Turkey,
Yeah.
this October. Could you please let us know how it all started and how it went and came up today, as short or as long as you want to say about it?
100 years is an interesting turning point because when you have this kind of turning points in the calendar, you see that you just sum up the history
Mm-hmm.
after that calendar change. 100 years is a long time, and Turkish Republic was found after the collapse of an Ottoman Empire. So Turkish Republic was a new idea in the end. It was a new way of thinking. It was a new start, and settle with its own borders, some sort of an citizenship idea, Turkishness. I mean, we are all born and raised equal. Hope so, maybe like this.
In
And
theory.
this kind of ideas, in theory, at least in theory. But after 100 years, Turkish Republic achieved something, but don't achieve a lot of things also. So we want to judge our past, and we want to like calibrate it, calibrate our history, and we want to. I want to understand it. After 100 years, Turkish Republic achieved something, but not enough in the end. We will see. In the 100 years, we have relatively stable borders, relatively stable government. We didn't have any civil wars like in the Balkans, like in Greece, or in Arab states, and we didn't have any occupation in our land. So Turkish people are lucky in that regard. But also, we are not in a fully performing democracy in Turkey, and we are not the richest guys in the world. So in Turkey, so that we have some issues, but in the end, Turkish people created some sort of wealth, some sort of poorness, some sort of despair, some sort of disdain, some sort of anger. But we reach all that with our hard-earned labor. We don't have any significant resources comparing to like Arab states, or we don't actually part of European Union. I can easily say that, so that we can some sort of proud, some sort of realistic to our country. I can say that. I can easily judge Turkey with that regard. We are some sort of a middle power and middle wealth country. We are not the poorest guys in the world, and we are not the richest guys in the world either. We are not living in the worst conditions in the world. We are not certainly not the best also. So we are keeping our pace, but not enough. In the end, after 100 years, we need a jump start, I guess, because you will ask me something about our last 20 years and what happened in Turkey, because our Turkish democracy, we claim that it's young, but it is not that young as we claimed. I mean, Turkish democracy mature enough, not matured enough, not aged well, not aged fine enough, comparing its age, because Turkish Parliament is maybe one of the oldest parliament in the world. Maybe in the first 10 parliaments of the world, Turkish Parliament. It's very early, in fact. But our fully turning to democracy is like 1960, 1946 and 1950s. We in Turkey turned to democracy maybe earlier than Spain. But in the end, we are humanitarian wise in the human rights scales far back from Spain. So we maybe started early, on the contrary of our beliefs, but lag behind, fall behind from the certain maybe. Not the leading members of the European Union. So this lagging behind of Turkey, democracy-wise, is a real issue. I mean, we were a NATO member. We were a European Union candidate in 1980s. All the Eastern European countries were back then like dictatorships. So after 30 years, we were still claiming a
in the same
democracy and
position.
claiming to be a candidate in to European Union. So we didn't progress enough. I can easily say it.
Yeah, like in Turkey, I guess in Turkish we have a proverb saying we cooked in our own oil. So like without any support from the West, like being a European Union member, we develop ourselves. But this was the point, I guess, the latest thing that we can achieve right now. So now we are having another election, and that's the important one.
Meaning all the things that you achieve by now, you own only to yourself. and not to anybody else. But as Ilkan said, that's not enough, not mature enough. There's still a lot of things to be done. And as he also mentioned, in the last 20 years, some big changes have occurred that maybe stopped the future development of democracy in Turkey, maybe not. Could you, Ilkan, tell what actually happened? I guess we know the person to blame, but probably there are other factors that brought this person into first place. Could you tell you the last 20 years in Turkey, how they were?
The person we are talking about, our last 20 years in Turkey, is surely Recep Tayyip Erdogan. As you clearly stated that in social sciences, you can not just blame one person. So the conditions that brought Erdogan, conditions were before Erdogan. So Turkish democracy and Turkish intelligentsia have had really big gaps and shortcomings before Erdogan. Before Erdogan, we had significant issues in Turkey, like inclusiveness. I can most basically say that because religious females in Turkish public could not identify themselves freely, could not establish themselves freely in public institutions. There were some headscarf bans in Turkish universities and Turkish public sectors. So that kind of discrimination actually divide Turkish public with very deep fault lines. So Turkish public is basically divided in mainly two or three different communities. We don't have any. We didn't have back then as a real civic society in that regard. We were much of a maybe communitarian small pockets were in Turkish society with little connection with each other. So that I can say incubates hostile anger within each other. So we had this issue. So Recep Tayyip Erdogan harvested that anger, harvested that disdain of people with each other because Turkish modernization period, which happens to be the main character of our last 200 years of history, mainly divides Turkish public, Turkish people to two political sides. One of them is more of a secular, one of them are more of a religious side. Their two sides have some interpretations, some different interpretations of modernization, different interpretation of citizenship, law and order, and they actually have had some sort of a different language. People are talking different Turkish language in their daily lives. I mean, they are saying some.
In one sense, as a dialect
No.
expressions?
I can. Yes. Maybe some of them are saying, for example, some of them are saying, for instance. And when you
Ah,
hear that, you understand that who he is voting for.
You mean like if he says salam, okay, he is conservative.
Yes.
He doesn't say salam, then
Yeah.
he's okay,
Yeah.
understand.
Merhaba and selam, aleyküm selam, and you get it. You get it.
Yeah. Secular is merhaba, salam is conservative.
And which word he use
Interesting.
or she use, you get it. You get it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when someone uses some sort of a keyword, you understand his opinion about Abdülhamid II. And no relationship, but you get it.
Without any further conversation, like you can stop there and
Yeah.
just yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our society is divided into two. So, and there is some Kurdish guys, and this is another story.
I thought you when you said two or three, I thought the third one was Kurdish. I guess so. Yeah,
Yeah. Those are the Kurds are the third.
the third one.
So Recep Tayyip Erdogan flourished with that foundation. In general, people were living in rural areas in Turkey in the last 200 years, mainly until the last couple of decades. Turkish people were living in rural areas and villages. Turkey was the main maybe the last bastion of rural population of Mediterranean area, Turkey. I can easily say the Turkish urbanization period is very haste and but late. Also,
I can see with the
we had a
buildings
late.
and the quality of buildings
Yeah.
and
We
the
wanna reach up.
latest
We wanna reach the skies.
fast
We want to
fast
urbanize
drive.
quickly. So that mainly the general public in Turkey were living in rural areas actually in the last 200 years. So with that division of seculars and religious people, mostly the common Turkish guy were actually living in a rural area where didn't have any relationship with these issues. But after we have free elections, after you should send those guys, those villages to the ballot boxes. So everything changed. After the ballot box issue came on, we have secular guys actually balanced it with their power of judiciary and army. So that we called some sort of establishment, statiko. In Turkey, we call it müesses nizam or something like that. Zinde kuvvetler. There are some different translations. We have, I mean, Turkish language is very rich in that area. For example, deep state is a Turkish invention. We call it deep state, and
Not the
it's
Trump copy from you and
yeah. I
QAnon
mean,
guys in the US.
yeah.
Okay.
It is Turkish actually. Deep state, derin
Oh.
devlet is a Turkish invention. We
I
have
can only imagine Republicans in US hearing about this. They would say no. I mean, although for them deep state is actually the Democrats, but and the guys behind them. So, but nevertheless, they think they come up with this expression. Yeah, interesting.
I mean, to Erdogan, deep state is CHP, so not very different.
It's the main opposition party, right?
Yeah.
CHP.
Main
Yeah.
opposition party.
Okay. For our audience to know, because not everyone knows the parties and abbreviations in Turkey. So, but yeah, regarding this the division of having of actual equalization between the secular and jurisdiction and military, you were saying that they came to
And vesayet tutelage. Tutelage was the idea of French political scientists who wrote something about Turkish tutelage system in 1980s. I just forgot it, sorry. But from 1923 to 1950, Turkey experienced a one-party rule. But after 1950, after 1946, Turkey transformed into a democracy. But that transformation from one-party rule to democracy were peaceful. It's very different from other parts of the world. I mean, we didn't have any civil war. We didn't occupied from anybody. For example, Italy's turn to democracy is basically because of the U.S. occupation of Italy after the Second World War. I mean,
Germany as
German
well, Japan
transformation
as
to
well.
democracy is also yeah. I mean, Turkish transformation to democracy is basically voluntary transformation to democracy. Maybe standing side to West at the Cold War, at the beginning of the Cold War. Turkey wants to stand close to United States, but we turn to democracy, and for example, our democracy is founded by the guys who ruled in the one-party system. So we have a unique democracy in that regard. For example, I mean, Turkish democracy is founded by the guys who ruled the country for 27 years as a one-party rule. So I mean, so that made Turkish unique, and that idea reinvents our one-party rule time in the tutelage idea. In the tutelage idea, calls about that 27 years were the incubation period of Turkish democracy. I mean that 27 years of modernization reinvents itself as a practice of democracy, as a for a cradle of democracy, and that sort of thing. Yeah, that was a nice story. That was a fine story. That was a reasonable story. That saves our founding fathers and leaves them as a democratical heroes. very fine story. But after that, we have coup d'états in sorry.
I'm sorry. Also, during those period, we also held elections, but not for the parties, but for the members of the parliament, right? If I am correct.
As individuals.
Yeah. One party rule. There are two trials, but they weren't successful. Actually, 27 years to 24 years of a one party rule. But that tutelage idea turned into something different after the coup d'etats. After the coups in 1960, 1971, after the coup attempts of 1960s, 1962, 63, there are two coup attempts, and 1980, Kenan Evren, the last actual coup in Turkey, 1980, 28 February, 28 Şubat in 1997, the last postmodern coup they call it. The army and judiciary forced our former Prime Minister Necmettin Erbakan to resign in 1997, and that these interferences that change the general view of Turkish establishment, and the tutelage idea was actually an idea of an caring father, caring mother. Like state is a caring father, a patrimonial figure. And after the coups, the state was not seen as a caring father, caring mother, not a patrimonial figure, but more of a toxic father who is like beating its
stepfather. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe something like that. It's the perception changed, and our more conservative people had a disdain to Turkish state and establishment. Recep Tayyip Erdogan founded his popularity back then to this disdain, to this hatred. He rose to power after a lot of political disputes and an economic crisis, but also before that, before all of them, Recep Tayyip Erdogan basically realized its ideological power to that disdain, people's dissatisfaction of state, this people's idea of unfair father figure, seeing state as an unfair father figure, and Recep Tayyip Erdogan was the guy who stands up to that unfair father and make the state himself. So he become that unfair father also. then today we see that.
Yeah, it's usually how it goes. You either stay long enough in politics to become a villain, or you get killed. That's how, some quote in the end. But I guess since in the beginning he didn't have the really good intentions, but eventually he showed up his real face. That's my interpretation of following the politics. You mentioned before, I need to digress, this coup d'etats. There were a couple of them in the 60s, 80s, and the last one in the 90s. Who led them and why was it so, for our audience to know?
In 1960, coup d'etat was led by an junta in Turkish army, which are basically the mid-level officers of army, and some sort of an academics were supporting them, and they supposed to find some political base in CHP also. CHP didn't really openly support the coup, but actually practically
CHP, the main opposition party, the Kemalist party.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, continue, please.
Didn't openly supported the coup, but some did also gave some support the junta with some elements of it. In 1960s, that there were several attempts to coup in the army, but they were unsuccessful. They wanted to make Turkey became like more of a Baas state, more of a Turkish army's interferences.
Which state, like in Iraq, you mean?
I mean, like a Baas state. I mean, I can say more of a Nasserist guy. An army stays in the power, runs the country, and they didn't want our army as an outsider force of politics. They want to take the army at the center of politics. They want something like Syrian or Egyptian, or maybe I can say an Iraqi style of a ruling, military ruling. We have more of a sophisticated system in Turkey, a more clear democracy in Turkey. We have more clear elections in Turkey. We have more established statehood in Turkey than those countries, in my point of view. And also, I can easily add that in 1960s, Spain was still ruled by Franco, General
True.
Franco,
Up until
and
1975.
Portugal was ruled by and Portugal was ruled by Salazar's boys. So it were some sort of achievable goal. It was not crazy idea or anachronic way of thinking. There were some coups in South Korea and this kind of stuff in that
There's
years also.
also dictatorship there. Yeah.
But there were
Yeah,
a kind of a common sense in army that like we will go into the room and we will clean and we will leave.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
In many coups. But there were also
Yeah.
opposite people, like things opposite.
I mean, our army in general wants to. Army was happy with its relationship with the West, and wants to maintain it. Wants to be side of the West and maintain the support of the West. Support of the West was crucial to Turkish army because of the strong presence of the Soviet Union and the Kurdish issue. And when you just jump on the stage, it's not easy to continue like like you start. So it's difficult. So then they gave the power to civilians in the end. Not very long time passed in their direct rule. But in the end, 1960s were in the 1960s Turkey were in a political turmoil. There were basically two juntas in army. I can easily say that they want to stay back to power. One of them is a more of a leftist junta. One of them is a more of a nationalistic junta in 1971. Leftist one actually lost its power to more of a right wing guys, and the right wing guys actually come on top in 1971. Turkey is mainly political class, and artists and academicians, like a lot of guys were detained and some tortured, and bad things happened in 1971. That was not a real coup. That was just a military ultimatum, but its results were same as a coup. Government resigned, and military some sort of maintained its power, and military rule.
Yeah, the governors of the cities were the military officers.
And after that 1970s, we have economic issues, as you know, that oil crisis, and that the dark 70s, we had political class was also in a turmoil. There were terrorist activities and mainly killings in Turkish streets. We had some sort of an ethnic and religious upheavals in mainly Turkish cities like Çorum and Sivas and Maraş. I can easily say it. Turkish mainly unionist union leaders, journalists were murdered, like Abdi İpekçi, disc leader. Some union leaders were also murdered. Some academicians were murdered. There are a lot of political murders in 1970s in Turkey. So army then again came to power with a coup in 1980s, and that was a real coup. That was a coup which is based its ideology on the chain of commands of Turkish army. That not a junta in 1980. It's different. The army came to power, not like of some combination of officers. The army came to power in 1980,
Completely.
and army stay a little bit longer, not just as 6 months or 1 year. Army was in the direct power in 3 years, and after 3 years, army also make the elections. It was a limited democracy. Not everybody can join the Turkish elections in 1980s. There were some political bans and restrictions to old politicians. An army stands itself aside from the old political class. The 1970s political leaders were banned to enter Turkish politics and elections because of army and coup d'etats restrictions in 1980s. And after that, in 1997, the postmodern coup that we are calling were actually not a real coup, but judiciary and armies and the media's common and collaborative pressure to government, which leads resignation to some of parliament members that supported that government. So that government leader Necmettin Erbakan forced to resign his post in 1997, which leads a new government, which were formed some support of media and Turkish that we call statu quo and establishment, what you call it, what you like to call it, I can say. But that government also weren't very successful in maintaining order, but some sort of a lucky government were at the end were able to detain Abdullah Öcalan from Kenya, so and won the election.
The leader of the PKK.
Okay. The
They
revolutionary
won the
organization from
elections.
Kurdistan, from Kurds.
Yeah, and they won the elections. Some sort of a successful coup, I can easily say, postmodern coup. We can say that in that regard. And 1999 elections, we had a different result came out. The Islamists were losing their power, and nationalists came to power. And we have again Bülent Ecevit, who was leftist guy in 1970s, but who became some sort of a secular nationalistic guy in 1990s, and they formed a government again. But on the contrary, that Ecevit was lucky with that capturing of Öcalan. His luck vanished. So we had 1999 an earthquake struck the Turkey, which also caused an economic upheaval because the earthquake hit the most industrialized areas of Turkey. Turkish budget were decimated in my point of view, and we have an economic crisis in 2001. And after the collapse of Turkish liras and Turkish economy, we also forced to an early election, and that election resulted a grand victory of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and started the Tayyip Erdogan era in 2002. So it's a short story of Turkish history.
Really short
Yeah.
one, but still, it's informative. Speaking about a bit more about military and the famous worldwide famous event in 2016. After that one, what's the? Or we should also talk about that one at least briefly. After that event, what is the current situation with military influence in Turkey?
In 2016, 15th July, coup attempt in Turkey that you call. And after the coup attempt, Turkish political sphere is actually become very harsh, harsher than the normal Turkish standards.
Which
I
was
can
also
easily say
harsh,
that.
but
About its effects and army's influence. Today, I am not really certain about the army's influence in Turkish politics, because we are not talking about army enough today. In Turkey, an army's effects and army's influence is very controversial. Should be controversial, but we are not talking openly and freely about it. We have some lack of knowledge as an intellectuals, and as a political figures, we have lack of courage. And because in 1990s, army's influence were discussed in two directions. One of them is Kurdish issue, one of them is Islamist issue. to talk about Islamism and Islamism is easy. Kurdish issues is more harsh one because it is more bloody one. And also, army has different connections in Turkish politics because we have now a military-industrial complex also, which is different from the last chapters of our history. It changed. We have now, for example, as you know, that son-in-law of Recep Tayyip Erdogan is a arms dealer, an arms producer. For example, it's very interesting case. He produces military drones and sells to the world. He's a leading producer of military drones, for example. He has a different connection. He has a very deep connections to Turkish army, and he is the son-in-law of our president. So that is an issue in my point of view. You should talk
Of
about it. I mean,
course.
he is the leading producer of military drones, armed drones, and he is the son-in-law of the president. So, but he is some sort of a sacred. He became a sacred guy,
Mm.
a sacred guy in Turkish politics. So we cannot easily discuss it. If you say something about him, it becomes costly. I mean,
To your life, to your
your
career.
integrity. Yeah, your integrity is discussed. Nationalism, your patriotism is an issue after that. So he is a interesting figure. He will be a more interesting figure in Turkish history and Turkish politics. He has some ambitions. I know that he has some ambitions, but not yet.
Mm.
Not yet. But
Mm.
maybe after Erdogan, he will try his way to Turkish politics. In my point of view, he is coming from a very religious family, but he also signals some nationalistic positions, and he had a nice education from Robert College to MIT and ITU, this kind of institutions. He has some nice education. He is an interesting figure because after Erdogan's reign of 20 years and military's change of its position, conservative Turkish public stand in line with Turkish army. They form some sort of a conservative nationalistic hegemony to Turkish public sphere. So it's not easy to judge some issue. It's not easy to criticize some issue when it's about security. And security is like an ambulance in Turkish politics. You should give your way to security. You should when they call it a security issue, when they call it an national interest, something like that. When you call something a national interest, it's out of discussion. We as liberals want to discuss the interests of Turkey. What is our interest? Who will judge them? Who will choose our interests? Can't we choose some different path of development, different part of wealth, different part of freedom? Can't we choose different ways? But it's not an easy area to discuss. After Erdogan, army actually found its political base after army reconciled with Erdogan. In my point of view, army did not have this kind of an public support back in 1990s and 1970s. In my point of view, today army is supported by both nationalistic guys and religious guys together. So very wide and strong coalition can be easily formed around army, very easily. You cannot judge it, you cannot discuss it. You should some sort of respect it, in my point of view.
Which is weird, since, as I recall, they were the guardians of Kemalism, of
Mhm.
secularism, and now the other guys are actually supporting the army, and the army now has a different role than it originally had back since the beginning of the republic and up until
Mhm.
2016. Really, the
Yeah,
ironic
because
twist.
maybe Kurdish issue changed its course, actually. The Kurdish political party today it's called Yeşiller ve Sol Party and Greens and Left Party. Back in days it was HEP, HEP, and then DEP, DEP, and HADEP, HADEP, and this kind of small Kurdish parties, which were actually getting 4% of the votes and 6% of the votes back in 1990s. Not very much, but significantly concentrated in the southeast of Turkey. Their voting base is concentrated in the southwest of Turkey, but the Kurdish population is also increased. So today, their support also increased. They reached to nearly 13% of the vote in 2015 elections. So that's not actually a acceptable way to Turkish democracy, because when you give some sort of a legitimacy to Kurdish party, it will change our classical way of political sphere. It is out of the question. I mean, people cannot easily see a Kurdish a Yeşiller and Sol Party governor and minister in the cabinet. So it is also an restricted issue. It's a very difficult subject to inhale, to digest in Turkey. So army actually give up its cause about religious agenda and some sort of get in an understanding with the religious people, and mainly focused on Kurdish agenda, which is also fueled by Syrian civil war, and PKK is gaining position from its fight against ISIS in Syria. So since PKK is maintaining and gaining legitimacy from its positions in Syria, army in Turkey also changed its position against Islamist and religious people in Turkey to somehow confront and maintain its ground against PKK, in my point of view. It is a difficult thing to understand, explain, or somehow comprehend.
It needs an episode for itself. I understand. I mean, you said before.
It is very difficult. I mean, people should write hundreds of pages. It's a very long story. Too long story.
And I can understand.
We can also mention about the Gülenist cases on the army. So they forced to be retired, the Kemalist soldiers, and also they were detained and spent some time in jail. That was also weakened the army in the Kemalist side, and the Islamists gets more power during those times.
Yeah. Gülenist people were an Islamic cult which has close ties to government. Government always wants to maintain its power against our Islamic community, and Islamism is always was a tool for government to maintain its discipline and ideology to the common people. Even the government was secular or not, because religion is a reasonable tool to that. Gülen was an imam who has a strong following and also a deep connections to government and maybe the foreign governments also. So he recruited his followers and he taught them to get strong positions in bureaucracy and army and judiciary. And he wants his followers to gain power in the state, to transform the state, which is formed a secular state. His main agenda was that. And his agenda was actually generally well in line with Tayyip Erdogan's agenda until 2010. Tayyip Erdogan's mainly opposition to general secular bureaucracy is very in line with Gülen's views in until 2010. But after that, Tayyip Erdogan and Gülen, they become enemies. They become they want to become, they both want to become the leader of the Islamic agenda. And in the end, their fight led to a military coup attempt, and Gülenists were deposed from army. Before that, also Gülenists were Erdogan's tool to clean Turkish army and judiciary from Kemalist. And after Gülenist came to power, Erdogan also have some support from the remaining Kemalist and nationalists to fight Gülenist.
What a ping pong game.
And then, yeah, something like that. And then today, I hope there are no more Gülenists came back left. But also we have some coalition in the bureaucracy. Generally, some remaining Kemalist, which is a small faction, very small faction. Some nationalistic guys, which are mainly always powerful in statehood. They were mainly represented in MHP, MHP, ülkücüler, nationalistic guys. They were always powerful in statehood. And in army, in judiciary, in bureaucracy, they were always powerful. They supported Erdogan, which with his fight against Gülenist, and they also benefited from that fight to gain positions against which were held by Gülenists. So they that positions came to nationalistic guys. So we are now actually want to see that how will the transformation happen if the election somehow won will will be won by Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. It is an issue. We will see. We'll wait and
Sorry,
see.
Ilkan. Yeah, sorry, Ilkan. It really sounds like a Spanish soap opera. This
That's
one
what
against
I was planning. That that's why we have that many soap operas in Turkey, and we are like selling the word that because we are living in one of even in the politics.
In politics, yeah.
I mean that there
Totally.
were some polls about like in Europe how much people believe in hell. Turkey is like 92% of Turkish guys are believe in hell. Maybe we are living.
Because you're living it. Yeah. You know, when I was I think I was 22, 23 when the coup 2016 or attempted coup appeared, and on the news I was like, oh, finally the guys will get Erdogan away. And then I found out, no, actually the Islamic guys are coming to take Erdogan away. I was like, wait, it wasn't he not already Islamic guy or semi-Islamic guy? What? And I thought the army is like Kemalist. Like, what's going on here? Like, should I support this or not? And then Onat explained to me, and it was even more complicated as you were saying it right now. It's a complete mess.
It was confusing for everyone in Turkey. I mean, some people were celebrating at the beginning, then they were like, okay, wait, what is happening now? Like, they didn't understand what's happening. Then they realized what's happening.
These are not actually my guys. I thought they were my guys, but they're not my guys. Like, no. So, you mentioned Ilkan at one point about this military, the guy that sells drones. You mentioned once the Erdogan is gone, he will probably come.
After if Erdogan lose this election, he may be the next leader of our Islamic population. He may become a leader. It is a real possibility that he may become a leader because
like full turn, that he's like fully open Islamic. Now he's like, I'm there, but I'm not there. But then he will switch completely to Islamic side, right? That's what you mean?
No. I mean, I can easily say that his family has Islamic roots. His father was a Necmettin Erbakan follower. in 1970s, Selçuk Bayraktar's father was a Necmettin Erbakan follower in 1970s, and Selçuk Bayraktar is also a Muslim guy who was a leading member of the Muslim community in MIT. He is a devout Muslim, I can easily say that, but he has also and nationalistic ideas, nationalistic views, because, for example, as I told you before, the language is interesting. For example, he has a daughter. His daughter is called like Aybüke or Ayşe, very Turkish, Turkic name.
The Erdogan's daughter.
And Erdogan, he has some leanings to nationalistic ideas, nationalistic points, and his family has some not very religious standing points also. I can easily say it. And his position in Ukraine is also very Western one. So I'm not in favor of him in the end. In general, I can say that, but his position is not pure Islamic, but not too much. I don't give him credit. He is not even a natural politician like Tayyip Erdogan, which Tayyip Erdogan was born and raised in the deep Istanbul streets and poverty and Islamic community. On the contrary, Selçuk is born to a very rich family, educated in colleges and private schools in Turkey. So you will ask me about it maybe next years. Not
Yeah,
today.
no problem.
He's not
Now we are
today's
focused.
topic.
No, we are focusing now on the possibility of just on these elections. How are the candidates going? The other opposition candidates running? Are they having any chances? What do you think?
Okay.
And who they are?
Dusan, we have 4 presidential candidates in Turkey. One of them is, as you know, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, reigning leader of Turkey, who leads Turkey 21 years, and he is the leader of AKP. And we don't need an introduction. We don't need an explanation about him, I guess.
He's well known in the Balkans.
Second candidate and mainly and most possible presidential candidate to overcome Tayyip Erdogan is Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, who is the leading figure of CHP, the main opposition party in Turkey. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu was born in 1948. He is an old guy, 75 years of age. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. His maybe last election to become president. He uses his last chance to overcome Erdogan. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu was the leader of Social Security administration in Turkey.
Like civil bureaucrat.
Okay. Civil
Yeah.
Okay.
National Healthcare and Social Security System leader in 1990s. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. He emerged from our old establishment. Even he was emerged from our old establishment, our old Kemalist establishment. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu has roots in Tunceli, which was called Dersim. He has Kurdish and Alevi origin. So Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, he is not a well-versed Sunni standard Turkish Muslim guy. We can call him as a minority person. He somehow claims that his roots anciently becomes Turkish, but his roots are mainly just Alevi and Kurdish and Zaza. We call it this kind of Kurds are Zaza.
From the Black Sea, right? Those ones.
No.
Not Laz. Not Laz. Zaza.
Okay. I know it's something Z and short. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
Zaza's like Assyrians, like very small community actually. They're not even like very
Interesting.
They are part of a Kurdish community, part of Kurdish grand community, part
like
of Kurds.
Yazidis in Iraq. I guess.
You can You can say that. You can
Also,
say
the
that.
Kurdish community. Yeah. And the other
Yeah.
candidate, the last one.
There are two more candidates.
Two more. Sorry.
Two more.
Yeah.
Two more. One of them is former candidate who ran against Tayyip Erdogan in 2018 elections, Muharrem İnce, who was the candidate of CHP, main opposition parties. Today, former candidate of CHP, who was actually presenting the dissatisfaction of Turkish opposition against Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. He gained some unexpected support, but not much more than 10% in today's polls. And the last one is Sinan Oğan. Sinan Oğan is a nationalistic guy from Iğdır, the border town to Armenia, Nahchivan, and Iran. He is also, and I can easily surprise you. He is also from a religious minority. He is a Jaferi guy, but he is ultra nationalistic. So he has some Azeri background. He is a professor of international relations. He had his PhD from Moscow State University, so he knows Russian. He had some reputation in security circles. I can easily say that. He represents nationalistic disdain from both candidates because Turkey has a new rise of a neo-nationalistic, I can say, youth, and he want to represent them because both Turkish opposition and Turkish government has very big nationalistic elements within them. But nationalists are everywhere, but also are always dissatisfied. And those dissatisfied nationalists are the target of Sinan Oğan. I guess you are now asking me about the polls and recent polls. Our Turkish presidential election system, you should reach 50% of the votes. So in the first round of elections, you need to gain majority. You need to reach majority. In the recent opinion polls, the numbers were both Tayyip Erdogan and Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu were near over 40% and less than 45% of the votes. And Sinan Oğan gaining very small numbers, small digits, 2%, 3%. And Muharrem İnce, who wants to reunite the Kemalist and dissatisfied youth against Tayyip Erdogan, and some ulusalcı people who were dissatisfied from Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu's opposition against Tayyip Erdogan. So Muharrem İnce's voting base, support base is nearly 10%. So in the end, we actually some predictions about the second round of elections. In our system, we have the first round to reach majority of the votes. If you don't reach the majority of the votes, two leading candidates run again after 14 days, after 2 weeks. And if, as I said before, after 14th of May, the first round, if we need the second round, it is 28th of May. 28th of May is probably Tayyip Erdogan and Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu will run against each other. And there are some polls about the second round. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu leads, but not very much of a high lead. I mean, 1%, 1.5%, 2%, not 3%. And lead he had. There are some polls that Tayyip Erdogan leads also. Maybe 50-50% chances of two candidates, but maybe Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu is leading a little bit. But as we know that the process of election research, there are some difficult issues to predict because, as we all know, Turkey suffered a great earthquake again in February. A lot of people changed their livelihoods They moved different cities. We don't know that their voting conditions are healthy or not. We don't know that we will have a healthy election in the earthquake area, which happens to home of nearly 5 million people. So we don't know
That's
that
all. They could change everything.
that can change elections. Also, maybe we have 3 million also votes abroad. Turkish people, as you know, from Balkans, living all around Europe. They have all have voting rights in Turkey. They did not vote enough in last elections, but they may actually participate the elections. As you know, maybe somewhere elections even are started. In my point of view, maybe I don't know,
I
but
heard
there are some
they start
embassies.
earlier, 10 days before
Yeah,
at least.
and Tayyip Erdogan also have a edge against opposition from the votes of abroad Turkish guys. As you know that Almancı people,
Germans.
gurbetçi, German Turks are leaning to Erdogan, and
So I heard as well.
our expats also leaning to Kılıçdaroğlu. Maybe Turkish guys in England and in United States are leaning to opposition, but in Germany, Turkish guys are leaning to Erdogan. They are more of a Islamic and conservative people.
I heard once I
And
saw somewhere in some shop CHP, so JAP billboard or something. I was like, is this possible in Germany? Opposition billboard for Turkey?
Well, in 2017, when I voted in Berlin for the referendum, it was 50-50 in Berlin. But in other cities, it is much more conservative.
Okay, Berlin itself is liberal one, so it's kind of like has some influence on the other people, I guess.
Yeah, but even in Berlin, it is 50-50. So
still better than the other areas. Yeah, understandable.
For the opposition, they are building their campaign for the let's finish this in the first round, and they have some concern about for it to be in the second round. I mean, I know the concerns. I lived during the 2015 in Turkey. We had 2 elections. But can you explain a bit about those risks of the of 2 weeks?
Yeah, surely. First, I must say about some basic things, because most basically, opposition lacks the funds to restart the election race with Erdogan, because opposition funds of political campaign will deteriorate in the opposition side, basically, in most screen of it. And the other one is also because of the don't system, and Turkey has some sort of a gerrymandering issues.
So for our audience to understand, the gerrymandering is basically you use the regular system in your advantage when you're on power. So you know that in this area, if you put like, it's also hard to explain gerrymandering, but I know what you mean. Like you have 5 municipalities, and you know if you include 4 being in one upper municipality, then you'll win. If you have only 2 which are regular ones, then you lose. So you just put them on your side, and you have more voting power. As simple as possible explaining, but I know what I mean.
Basically, I can easily say that to reach the majority in the Turkish parliament, opposition needs more votes than the government. Because in the parliament elections, we will have 2 elections in 14th of May.
Okay.
And parliament election, government has an unfair, maybe fair, advantage against opposition, because CHP is leading mainly the most populous places like Democrat Party and Republican Party in United States. I can easily say that. And small Anatolian cities, AKP still have the lead. It has the lead, so AKP may easily reach, may more easily reach the parliamentary majority again than opposition. We don't have a clear view which side will reach majority, or maybe none of them will reach majority. Maybe they will all need the Kurdish support, and this will be maybe this may make Turkish public opinion. This may lead Turkish public opinion to the Erdogan side. The Turkish opposition are afraid of that, actually.
Mhm.
And in spite of consolidation and stabilization, Turkish public may choose to vote for stability, may choose to
Oh.
vote for vote against uncertainty. The people may choose to vote against uncertainty because the lack of parliamentary majority of the Turkish opposition. So if Turkish opposition lose the parliamentary majority in the parliamentary elections, then Turkish opposition may also lose the presidential elections since it lose the parliamentary majority, because Turkish public's a very strong tendency towards stabilization, towards certainty, towards some sort of a Turkish public is something like that. Maybe we don't like the government, but we always like to have the government. We may hate the government, but we like to have a government.
Can I just come back to this one just to understand what you said? So, as Onat also said, if the first election round you have in parallel parliamentary and presidential elections, the parliamentary
Yes,
elections are finished. No matter who wins or lose, they're finished. But if the
yes.
presidential elections are not decided, then you go to second round. And if in the
Mhm,
first elections the opposition loses the parliament, then it jeopardizes in the second week the presidential elections to lose them as well. Okay, and
yes.
also what you said, the gerrymandering, I think I come up with an explanation. Well, like in the U.S., good parallel, meaning although you have like a popular vote in the sense the
Mhm,
majority of people individually have a lot in the majority populated areas. In the end, the administrative system is different. Then they're like equalizing itself, although they have less population, rural areas and urban
mhm.
areas. Oh, I get it now.
Yes,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
yes, yes. Certainly.
yeah.
Uh, You
Okay,
explained
clear.
more, much more better than me.
No, just following what you said. This also for me was, it's as we said at the beginning of the episode. It's like a complex topic, and it's getting
Mhm,
more complex as way we go into it. You were saying
yeah.
about the presidential elections. For our audience to understand, especially in the Balkan areas, you know that we have one specific system. It's parliamentary system itself, and you have like presidential system.
Mhm,
Both Balkan countries and Turkey have parliaments for sure, but in Balkan countries and most of Europe, like Germany, Italy, and so on, the prime ministers are the ones that have the power. As I
mhm,
understand, in Turkey it was the case up until 2017 when the reform happened,
mhm.
and then you switch to the president has the full more power actually than prime minister, and the parliament is there for some
No,
lesser
all
activities.
power. There's no prime
The
minister.
whole power. There's no prime minister. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why for our audience to understand this, these presidential elections are very important. Otherwise, if you have those elections in Bulgaria, Serbia, Croatia, you
Mhm,
name it, it will like, okay, president elections, they're like not so important. He only represents the country abroad, the military top person gives medals and so on. But in Turkey, it's the big deal, as I
mhm.
understood. Could you
Yes.
explain at least what the parliament, the parties, when with election happens, what are their major influence in the parliament?
Before that question, I want to
Hmm.
add something, because Onat also, I guess, wants me to express the shady part of
Yeah.
afraid.
In 2 weeks, yeah, yeah.
Because our political parties could not establish a certain government after 2015 June elections. We didn't have a real government. We just have interim government uh, till the next election, which is happened just after that election, which 2015 November.
Yeah.
So and and within that time period from June to November, we have this Turkish government and PKK had the ceasefire, and ceasefire was broken, and some bloody bombings and terrorist activities happened with that period, and these terrorist activities cause the revitalizing the support of Erdogan.
To be
That is
honest,
an issue.
I'm not like a guy that's into this conspiracies, but it sounded really like, wow, why now? Why now? All of the
Yeah.
time it just happens.
Yeah.
It's just
And
too obvious.
and that 15 days of period with the two rounds of elections make people remember that time in 2015. So one issue is that, and the other issue is, as you know that, as we all know that, Turkish economy is maybe on the verge of collapse. Turkish lira is deteriorating its value, and Turkish lira's position against foreign currencies, against euro and United States dollar, is very on the thin line. So Turkish central bank actually always participating the money market to save Turkish currency. So we
Hmm.
don't know about Turkish central bank's position. We don't know how our economical authorities will react on that 15-day period. It's very shady
Hmm.
also. And economically and security wise, there are two aspects of it. We don't know that. We don't know about the main agenda. We don't know what will happen. We are on full oblivion. We don't know anything about it. We are it's like a dark jungle, and we don't know it. We don't know it. So that's a very big unknown there. So we are all, as an Turkish political thinkers and pundits, public pundits, we are all afraid of that period. We are all
Hmm.
have some doubts about that 15 days period. But also,
Hmm.
I want to add something also. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu's popularity was nearly 20-25% before he was reigning as a candidate against Tayyip Erdogan. After his candidacy is established, his popularity rose from 25% to 40%. So that in the second round, maybe there are some dissatisfied voters who are mainly against Erdogan. Dissatisfied voters who are against Erdogan are nearly 60% of Turkish voters. Turkish voters, 60%. But they are not all happy with siding alongside Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu.
Hmm.
But in the end, even if they say that they won't, they can turn like the last 15% of the voting base. The next 15% may also turn to Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu against Erdogan, because Tayyip Erdogan has a strong base in nearly about 40% of Turkish population. 40%. 60% is against. But that 60% cannot easily stand in line between each other. They have
Hmm.
issues between each other. So we have this issue. It is on this election. Since the election has two rounds, maybe two rounds may solve this issue, but we don't know it. We don't experience it. We cannot make, in my point of view, a scientific enough polling about it. We just
Hmm.
should just leave it. It's
Yes.
difficult,
See what it
but
happens.
we
Yeah.
don't have any option.
As you said, like those 2 weeks, if they happen, any miracle or bad thing on horror stuff can happen. Like you're like living in an unknown world. Turks from Gora spaceship will come and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
from space, and
I mean, for
anything is
example,
possible.
as if you are an investor, would you buy dollar or sell dollar? Who knows?
True. Let's hope it will be solved in the first round, and then you will
Yeah.
not need to live in those 2 weeks of agony and yeah,
I mean,
and
if we
whatever.
have a second round, just call me again.
Ah, yeah, that would be a good idea. Because one of my questions was also like how you see future of Turkey in both of outcomes. In outcome when
Mhm.
Erdogan wins and when Erdogan loses.
I have a prediction. Both Erdogan wins or loses, Turkey will face an election in 2025. We won't have a stable government after Erdogan. We lost the basis of a lot of institutions, and since the division in Turkish opposition, it is very difficult. It will be very difficult to establish a stable government in Turkey. Turkey's economy needs some sort of a consolidation, some sort of an economical program to be more stable. But after that, politically, it will be very difficult to be in power like 4 or 5 years. After the local elections, municipal elections in 2024, 2025, we will have, in my point of view, a new election in both cases. If Erdogan wins, Erdogan's economical agenda cannot be maintained much longer. It will lead an economical disaster. Since Erdogan postponed the consequences of his economical policies, Erdogan's rule could not actually maintain through next 4 or 5 years. Maybe just in 2 years, conditions will force Erdogan to a new election, in my point of view, because even before elections, Erdogan stepped back from his former political positions, like against United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Egypt. The reason of that is mainly not because of his political position, because Erdogan lacks of money, lacks of funds. Erdogan wants to reach money, wants to reach funds, so he backs down from his old political and ideological positions against Arab leaders who are against Muslim Brotherhood, Ikhwan. So, but in my point of view, even his backdowns, Erdogan's main economical agenda could not establish a stable society and public in Turkey. So we will see that even he wins the next election, he won't be in power in the next 4 or 5 years, in my point of view. And the opposition wise, it will be political issues will emerge after Erdogan, because, for example, the Turkish guys you are talking about, Onat and İlkan, we have issues between each other, but to overcome Erdogan, we come together, okay. But after Erdogan, there is nothing binds us. So after Erdogan, there won't be a stable government. So it is expected to dissolve the government, and after Erdogan, the next election, the next phenomena, next era will start, in my point of view, in 2025.
Pluralism, basically.
Yeah.
Do you think that if the opposition couldn't use that chance wisely, like in Israel, they won the election but they couldn't maintain and they lost the early elections? Not Erdogan, but some other followers of him would gain the power back and continue ruling the Turkey, or some other opposition party would win the election.
There is an issue about it. There is a very small chance of it, in my point of view, because Turkish system is some sort of a different than Israeli system. Because in Israel parliament is more powerful than Turkish parliament. So, in order to enforce an earlier election, you should maintain like 3/5 of the parliament members. It is not very easy. You cannot maintain that kind of a majority against the Turkish president, against the elected Turkish. For example, if Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu is elected, Tayyip Erdogan should maintain a 360 parliament members on his side to force Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu to an early election. It is very difficult. It's very, the Kurds won't align with Erdogan, CHP won't align with Erdogan, so it is not probable, in my point of view. But if Erdogan maintains a strong base in parliament, I can easily say that parliament will be a tricky battleground to the next president of Turkey, because we will have Kurds in parliament, and there they will want something from you.
I understand. They're in the best position to bargain
for their support.
Future.
So if you want to gain support from the Kurds, you should give something to them. If you gave something to Kurds, then nationalistic guys will arise and they decline. They don't support you. So it will be a fine balance. It will be tricky thing. It will be a very tricky thing. It is difficult. It will be difficult. But an early election is also a very early election is also against the interests of the all parliamentary members. So that is some
Yeah.
selfish issue, but they want to feel like an parliament member. They want to feel like an
Before
representative.
2017, before the reforms, right? To
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
more power, like more
Yeah.
in
And
a
they want
sense.
to feel the power, so they won't easily convince an early election. In my point of view. So I don't think we will experience same issues with Israel, but we will have certainly issues. We will certainly have issues, but not like Israel, but we will have our own issues. I can easily say.
This is Turkey. We always have issues.
Yeah.
Impossible to avoid them. In the end, those elections, and when they happen, no matter who wins in the end, what is the impact in terms of world and specifically in our case, the Balkans?
I mean, if Turkish opposition overthrows Erdogan through democratic election, it will boost our morale in Turkey and also in the world. Because Turkey will be seen as an example. For example, Turkey was seen as an example of an Islamic democracy, Islamic majority country with a Western style democracy. As a member of NATO, as a candidate of European Union, Islamic majority country, a parliamentary democracy, Turkey was a model in early 2000s and in late 1990s. But after Erdogan's reign, this model country idea is vanished. Turkish European vision is vanished. Turkish position in Western power balance is vanished. Turkish position in NATO also deteriorated. Turkish American alliance is also deteriorated. We can easily say that Turkey and United States were considered themselves as a strategic partners, but now we are not. We have F-34 issues, S-400 issues. We have significant issues with United States also. And then our democracy, our place in human rights issues, our Turkish place in human rights issues, democracy issues are not actually welcoming, are not very satisfying. But Turkey, in the end, still a democracy. We have still some sort of real election. We have, and Turkish people have the tendency to vote, have an experience to vote, experience to be side with an opposition. Turkish people have that kind of an understanding, that kind of an inclination. So even if we lose our established state apparatus, even if we lose our judiciary system, even if we lose neutral state and legislative system and this kind of stuff, we have still elections. We have still have ballot boxes. We rely on them actually. We don't have actually like intellectuals. We don't have strong intellectual presence. We don't have universities. We don't have media. But we have just elections, in my point of view. We have just elections.
That's
I mean, we
secure,
have
but that's what you mean.
intellectuals, but intellectuals have no authority. Intellectuals have no, for example, autonomy. We have intellectuals, but even if you are intellectual, if when you don't have any authority, when you don't have any autonomy, what does it mean? It means nothing. You are just a clever guy. It means nothing. Turkey still have intellectuals, but they don't have any autonomy. They don't have any authority. Turkey has, for example, Turkey have universities. Turkey have media corporations, but in reality, Turkey don't have any universities. Turkey don't have any media corporations, in my point of view, because they are not basically independent. They don't have any authority or any autonomy, anything like that. They are just part of a very strong state apparatus. They are just part of an Erdogan system, which is ruled by brother of his son-in-law. Is running the media also. Yeah, Erdogan has another son-in-law.
Again, soap opera. But
Yeah.
mainly son-in-laws. I guess his investment was really good in that area.
No.
Proper son-in-laws.
Brother of his son-in-law running the main media running one of the main media outlet of Turkey, Sabah.
Yeah. I see, as you mentioned, like all those institutions are basically shells, or they don't have a real value as they should have, and the only thing it can be changed is through voting. Got it.
About the Balkans, I can easily say that right-wing authoritarian and populist leaders are alike each other, in my point of view.
Oh, trust me, Onat and I having like talks about this all the time. As like my leader, I don't like to call it like this, but the leader of in my country, Vučić, Alexander Vučić. So he sometimes even wears the same clothes as Erdogan. Like they're wearing going to school together, wearing the same uniforms, and doing the same stuff of pulling out scandals, military when they have some really crisis, and same stuff by the book, same authoritarians and populist stuff.
They are learning from each other. They are, for example, LGBT issue was not a main issue in Turkish politics back in 4 or 5 years ago. But Erdogan and his guys learned from Eastern Europe that LGBT issue is a main grand issue in Turkey. They changed the politics space. I mean, Turkish guy actually wouldn't actually much of a care of LGBTQ issues. We are not very open people, but we don't care in Turkey. Just we don't care. But in the end, in the last 5 or 6 years, LGBTQ issue some sort of becoming a main threat to Turkish families. I mean, it was a non-issue in Turkey, but he learned from his European brothers, I guess. I mean,
brothers,
that happens. Because
I'm surprised they still didn't use the abortion right issue. It is still
don't give them any ideas.
Legal here in Turkey. They still didn't discover that.
Don't spread it. It will use it eventually. But you said İlkan, so
overthrowing of Erdogan may inspire a lot of people, and it will be a moral boost to all liberal democracy and democracy supporters, I guess. And Erdogan's collapse may lead to people think that the things that they thought to be inevitable or impossible can be achieved, and this is as itself as a very important thing. This is just an important thing, and even if Turkish opposition won't reach a stable government, we will find a government in the end. It's not an issue. We can change it. After Erdogan, it won't be that difficult. it won't be for 20 years. So it won't be as big. It won't be a big issue as it was before. It won't be an issue as it was before.
It gives me hope. Like if I can imagine Turkey without Erdogan, then it's also possible to imagine Serbia without Vučić. So honestly, just thinking about it gives me hope. So you're probably right. But what my also not concern, but like what will the future look like? You know, in the Balkans, Erdogan is perceived as a strong man, and he is promoting this so-called, some people call it neo-Ottomanism, or however you call it, and especially influencing the things going on in Bosnia, in Albania, in Kosovo, to some extent Macedonia, having good ties with Serbia and Serbian strongmen there. So imagine of having no Erdogan, how the influence and the relationship between Turkey and those countries will be.
I mean, it is very difficult. Difficult. Turkey and Erdogan feels the space in Balkans that maybe European Union should feel it. Europe,
True, Russia as well to
and
some
Turkey.
extent. So yeah.
They turned their backs to Balkans, and Erdogan had gained some unfair importance in Balkans, in my point of view. He is not that important. And Turkey and Balkan states can easily maintain commercial and cultural connections. That is easy. That can be easily achievable. And Turkish and Serbian economies can easily contribute to each other. That is a non-issue. That must be the first thing they should do. That's not the issue. But in the political area, European Union actually should be more of a responsible player in that area, in my point of view. So after Erdogan, Turkey and Europe may start a new collaboration through Balkans, maybe, because when we should be realistic. Turkish membership to European Union is not a very imminent case. It's not a very
No,
not a very
unfortunately.
even Erdogan gone. So Turkey needs its Balkan connections to be a part of European theater. So we will find Turkey and Balkan states surely find ways to communicate and establish relationship between each other. The issue about Bosnia is a little bit tricky one, since we have the issues of Ukraine here. I don't know. After if Ukraine and the war in Ukraine finishes, uh, we won't have problems in Balkans. But the fire in Ukraine is actually makes me suspicious and makes me like a little bit of scary, a little bit of a. I have one eye
Yeah,
on
I
that.
understand. It can easily spread out in the Balkans. This
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
antagonism between people.
I
Yeah,
mean, in Moldova and after the
true.
Transnistria
Transnistria.
and this.
Yeah, let's hope that if he's completely gone, hopefully he's gone. That also these populist leaders in the Balkans will also be gone at some point, and that, as you said, the commercial and cultural ties will stay there, and political wise, that the democracy will be more promoted. And since the connection with Turkey and Europe is basically the Balkans, and the connection with Europe with the Middle East is through the Balkans, so this connection should stay there and not be excluded in the near or further future, for sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the hope of changing the government with the vote must be some sort of influence the Balkans and also in the Europe, because in Turkey the voting percentage is really high compared to other countries.
That's
Like
good.
sometimes it is like a 90%, but in the other countries it's really low. So people don't have any vote or they don't have any interest, and they also complain. We also complain, but we are we are trying. So yeah, we might influence the specifically the Balkans in that way.
True. The mentality in the Balkan is like mostly apatism. Like they're like, why would I go? I will not change anything. They will still, be in rule. Or we have some explanation. It's really funny. It has something with Turkey to do. It says, Kurta comes down from the horse and Murta comes back. I don't know, meaning the same shit there and back. So that's why they're not voting, because they will not change anything. But still it will give hope. I mean, in the Balkans, especially in Montenegro, there has been a change. The guy is down after 30 years, both in parliament, and in parliament was 2 years ago or three, and now in terms of presidency. So there is a hope, and let's see how it will evolve in a couple of years. Often it happens, unfortunately, you have a new guy, new spirit, new energy, but the system stays there and he becomes corrupt. Let's hope it doesn't happen. But yeah, and I'm really looking forward to these elections in Turkey, and let's hope that it will change for better in the first round, especially. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully, I'm hoping it to be finished in the first round, so we can have some some festivals in the June.
Araki and everything else. So, I would love. I mean, I was present in Turkey in 2018 when there were those elections, visiting Onat, of course, and they were
just before the elections there. Yeah.
Just before, so a lot of big crowds everywhere about those candidates. So it looks like a real big thing. It's the same in the Balkans, but mostly one party is doing this. Here you have like different football clubs and fans, and like it's really a specific culture of voting, as you said. People like tend to go to voting, tend to be involved. That's really unique stuff, and let's hope it will have an impact.
I mean, Onat, I send you a small clip. The guys from Balkans in Istanbul, who are migrants from Serbia, actually, Bosniak guys, singing a Bosnian song to celebrate İmamoğlu's victory against Binali Yıldırım.
I will check.
Okay, we will share also this with our audience if they want in the link in the description, as a link in the description. Yeah. Ona, do you have some other questions?
No, actually, I mean I covered everything for my side. Do you have any? We can.
No, this was like really, in the end, a good wrap up from my side, and I hope our audience also enjoyed. We now have, at least I can also say in my name, a clear picture, or at least as clear as possible it can be, of what's going on in Turkey and how big importance it has for the society, not only in Turkey but for the surrounding countries and the system. And yeah, it's really a big thing. It's a big country. It has its connections to a lot of nations in Middle East, in Europe, in Central Asia, and has a big diaspora. So to definitely have an impact, and let's hope in May that the things will turn for the better and change the discourse that's going on for the last 20 years. Yeah.
If needed, I can also create some like diagram with
please do. This one
who
is
connected with what and in the past, and now they change. So yeah, it is hard to follow, but
it needs to be like a video or a short GIF, like, because in changing colors, he was an Islamist, then he became like a liberal, conservative. He changed back and forth. So in development phase, it's like a Pokemon developing. It's a small Pokemon, bigger Pokemon. Really unique changing of the colors. True. Of the colors, party ideologies. Yeah. Well, yeah. If that's so, Ilkan, thank you very much for being guest at our show. It was a pleasure of meeting you. You were really insightful, and you shared a lot about not only the politics but history and culture in Turkey. And we hope to see you soon in person, and maybe in some future episodes.
Always happy to be here.
Yeah. Wish you lots of luck also with your work, with your journalism, with your publicism, and with Dactylo 1984. Am I right?
For my side, I cannot fully say that because I already know those topics, but I believe we covered and we clear most of the people from the other countries, so now they have the better understanding about the elections and Turkey in general. And thank you, Ilkan, for joining and for your time as well. It was really yeah.
And let's hope in October this year that Turkey will live in a full democratic system in celebrating 100 years of the existence of the Republic of Turkey. Yeah. How do you call republic again in Turkish? I forgot it.
Cumhuriyet.
Cumhuriyet. Yes.
Cumhuriyet.
Very specific word. Very specific and typical and really specific Turkish word. Yeah.
We will get there in the next 100 years.
Let's hope sooner than that. Thank you again, and wish you a nice evening. And bye.
And yeah, thank you. Bye. Please like, subscribe, and also please check the links below on the video to support our channel. Thank you all.
We always forget this. Yeah, thank you all, and see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.